Okay, it's day 6, and this is part 1, and I've actually had quite a bit of internet blowback for picking on this poor plane here in National Harbor. I call it the John Brennan Fentanyl 1 plane, flown by Oleg Deripaska. So a lot of folks are saying, hey, that's unfair. This is just a plane. It has no background in drugs for weapons. You're maligning this poor plane here. And I'll just go into some of the background with John Brennan, first of all, and National Harbor, so you can see that it really is just a monument to the fact that John Brennan is running a shadow government. So here, if you haven't seen this, the first thing that this plane called 8 EV, 485 EV, the original story was that it was in storage in Rhode Island at that Quonset Hut Naval Air Station up in Rhode Island, in Kingston, Rhode Island. Now I'm going to say that this air wing, this airlift wing, ever since after World War II has been involved in drugs for weapons, but we're not there yet. But this first thing is it started out with a lie. The plane, here's the flight of 2015, right up to the Iran nuclear talks from St. Louis, Missouri to Kingston, Rhode Island here. You can see here Kingston, Kansas City to Kingston, Rhode Island. Were they taking NAVNI people out to NGA after they had graduated from the War College and moving them out into different homes at the National Geospatial Agency for doing different types of interpretive work? We don't know the answer to that yet. But this certainly puts a hole in the idea that the plane was out of service during what I call the Oleg Deripaska years in Iran, from 2009 to 2015, to the Iran nuclear talks ending. So if we zoom in a little bit here on the National Counterterrorism Center that was built by Peterson Group near the CIA. Of course, there's going to be DynCorp there in Tyson's Corners. Here's Tegna, remember the agent company. This is the satellite company. This is all right near Tyson's Corner Shopping Center, which was built by the CIA, and CIA laundered money. And we'll zoom in here a little bit. Of course, you remember DynPort, the joint venture between DynCorp and Portentown, for chemical weapons. As we zoom in here, anytime you get colonies of Tyson's Corner, you've got to worry. But we've done several shows here at Tyson's Corner Galleria where I met with Deep Understanding and so forth, who had worked for DynCorp. So a lot of this is firsthand information. So we zoom in here on the National Counterterrorism Center, which was started in 2003, mainly by John Brennan and George Bush helping him. And we'll zoom in here on this Peterson construction. You can see that this is the Office of Director of National Intelligence was created in 2003 as in the aftermath of 9/11, Counterproliferation Terrorism Center, and of course this National Counterterrorism Center. I'm not sure about all of these, but I'm pretty sure Peterson's was involved in a lot of these. Let's zoom in a little bit more, see if we can get a little bit more. When I see names like this, ONCIX, I get very interested. Anyway, I'll just give you a little bit of orientation. Of course, everything with CIA comes with a seal. This is the Terrorism Threat Integration Center, right, which is a part of the Counterproliferation Center. This was Brennan's baby. And then that led to a large task force of about 100 people across a whole bunch of different departments, like FBI and DHS. This is the cabal. This is the cabal. And these people are making money on drugs for weapons, and they are investing in places like Tyson's Corner, like the wharf here in D.C., and like National Harbor. But we're not there yet. So anyway, there's this article in Patch. I'm using this reprint here because it's better type, but this is that Threat Terrorism Integration Center. Again, John Brennan being the key person behind it with Peterson Companies. They also did National Harbor, right? And then Brennan in 2003, because he was not CIA director, working with George Tenet, pulled together a group of about 100 staffers from the intelligence and law enforcement agencies, including FBI, Department of Defense, Homeland Security, that would later emerge as the Terrorism Threat Integration Center. This is the heart of the cabal. This is the heart of the cabal. These are the people who are paying to play. They're making the money. They're going to be making the decisions about DynCorp, etc., as the cutout business. Now here's the Peterson Companies. It was one of the largest privately held real estate development companies in the Washington area, Milton Peterson, etc. Now I don't fault any company for making stuff, but it's just repeating patterns. It's just creatures of habit go to their same go-tos for all their developments, and Peterson is John Brennan's go-to. They did the Silver Spring Mall, New National Harbor, etc. I'm just going to guess straight off the bat that they're involved down at the wharf. It just has that feeling as soon as you walk in there. But you can see here the Peterson Companies they have an inside on all the CIA building here. They built the CIA University in where? Chantilly and Centreville, Washington. Those names keep coming back. So this is just yet another route to follow in terms of metadata if you want to follow John Brennan and why he would build a monument to himself. Now here's CAI, and I keep talking about Cruz Associates Inc. because it's not only a plane game, it's also a helicopter game. Once you get to a depot like a Quonset hut located somewhere in the world, a Ukrainian arms depot somewhere in the world, then you helicopter it to different conflict points in the region, right? So that's why I say this CAI, this Cruz Associates Inc. is really CIA. They even call themselves CAI. And if you look at where they get their technology, it's coming from the major different research laboratories, the Navy Research Laboratory, the Air Force Research Laboratory. Navy Research Laboratory is here in Anacostia. The Air Force Research Laboratory is at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. Two places at Lockheed's been. And again, when you start looking at this, you're going to start seeing more and more of these what I call USAID UN pilots. Here's one guy named Imran Ali Awan. They left his last name off. And again, the Pakistani CAA, which is the Civil Air Authority. But this is going to be your Pakistani CIA for doing these helicopter flights. If you don't remember this profile, this guy was basically he's going to be a flight teacher, and he's going to be trained here at Quantico in Virginia, and he's also going to be making runs down in Marana, down at that airport that was bought by Relativity Capital. This is the last mile, if you will, or the last 100 miles in drugs and weapons flight. So, again, just take this one. I don't mean to pick on Mr. Cruz here, Mr. Flynn. This is Jason Flynn, Patrick Flynn, I'm just using this as a representative example here at Cruz Associates. Again, flying these ISR operations, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance operations. Before that, these larger systems, these unmanned systems. And again, when you're flying from, let's say, Pakistan or some center somewhere else like Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas, there is a separation between the people and the weapons and the drugs. It's so much so that you really don't care about where you're flying. You're just going in, you're doing your flight. It could even be that you don't even know what's being carried, all right? And that's what I'm saying here is the folks may not even know when they're being trained what they're carrying in these training flights. But it's going to be the DynCorp training flights that are the major drugs for weapons flights. And that just, again, I'll prove that again and again. So here's another person I talked about yesterday, which is the second Firestone, this Jamie Firestone. We talked about Thomas Firestone being the key go-between between Nellie Orr and that Kingston, Rhode Island Navy base, where the drugs are, maybe the drugs are coming in, but at least we know the weapons are leaving there, and that interface. But this is his brother Jameson Firestone, and he's Bill Browder's lawyer. Basically, he lived in Russia for a while. You can see his Russian profile here. He's got the justice scales with a big X through it. He speaks perfect Russian, as does Thomas Firestone. These are the people that are reinvesting the money made for drugs for weapons and making sure that there's no, people are not caught in money laundering, making sure Oleg Deripaska gets off of the Interpol lists and so forth. And I'll just go to Interpol here. Here's Thomas Firestone's resume, and I'll get to the resume later for our good friend there that we just talked about, Jamil. But here's Thomas Firestone at Baker McKenzie, and what is he? Well, he got a person out of anti-corruption in Eastern Europe, right? That's going to be Ukraine. That's going to be Timoshenko. And we supervised anti-money laundering risk assessment for banks in Kyrgyzstan and Pakistan. Where's that? That's going to be Nadra Bank, and that's also going to be Pinchuk's bank as well. All the banks we've talked about, Sure Bank, Alpha Bank, all these banks are going to be interesting as far as this is concerned. You can just see that it's all focused on money laundering and Swiss banks and getting people off of Interpol delisting applications. That's going to be for Oleg Deripaska, right? So we just basically follow Baker McKenzie and Baker Hostetler, right? In this case, we're going to follow Baker McKenzie. Well, let's look at some other joint ventures. Here's Baker McKenzie with this FEN ex-UN joint venture. Some of the darker lights out there might say, well, that's fentanyl exchange with UN pilots, right? That's FEN ex-UN. No, it's not it's not an alliteration for fentanyl exchange with UN pilots. It's to buy land in Shanghai. It's a huge joint venture to buy land in Shanghai. So the problem I have with these joint ventures is they put the drugs for weapons money right back into the countries that are running the drugs and making the drugs, not the companies like investing in the United States. That's my big problem with this. So again, if you don't remember Timoshenko, the first female prime minister of Ukraine. And then, of course, you have the DuPont Russian Innovation Center. And they have these innovation centers all over the country, but I just wanted to show you how closely DuPont was linked with Russia, so closely linked. And then last thing I'll end up on is the information on the Select Senate Committee for Intelligence. Somebody leaked the fact that two different people had seen Andy McCabe and Lisa Page take seriously Rod Rosenstein's suggestion that he wear a wire to try to entrap Trump for a 25th Amendment trap. So again, is that why this Senate guy got doxxed? Because he was mad because he got fired last year for being a leaker, and now they're hitting him again and making up a story about the Supreme Court? I think it might be because the sentence is so egregious. It has that smack of reprisal. That's all for this morning's part one.